Good evening. Welcome to the annual reorganization meeting of the Bernards Township Board of Education, which will be immediately followed by a regular board action meeting. I'm Rod McLaughlin. I'm the School Business Administrator Board Secretary, and as is custom and state regulation at every annual reorganization meeting, I have the honor of presiding over the meeting until the board is reorganized. With that said, I'd like to ask everyone to stand for a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A couple of housekeeping notes to begin with. Every board member should have a copy of the ethics disclosure requirement that I would like you, if you could, to sign and return to my administrative assistant, Ms. Nicholson, at some time within the week or so. In addition to that, for those board members who were elected or newly elected or re-elected in November, you should also have at your seat a copy of the required oath for school board members. And I'm going to ask those members who are present here this evening to just come forward in a minute and have the oath administered. So please bring that with you so you can simply recite the oath, if you would, publicly. The only other thing I'd wish to note is that board member Mrs. McCune is attending virtually this evening, and earlier this afternoon I swore her in, and we have already sworn her into office basically, and we have her signed oath of office. With that said, if you would all just step forward for a minute, we can begin with the swearing in process.
Don't do that.
For the record, I wish to note that this evening's agenda, which will become part of the permanent board minute records, has the statement of election results. And at this time, what I'm going to do is begin the reorganization process. And I'd like to call for nominations for the office of president. Are there any nominations for the office of president? The chair recognizes Mrs. White.
I'd like to nominate Robin McCann.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'd like to second.
Okay. That's one. Are there any other nominations for the office of president?
I'd like to nominate Tim Salmon.
Okay. And are there any seconds? Okay. Seeing none, I will move on the nomination for president by Mrs. White, seconded by Mrs. Gray of Robin McCune, and I will call the roll at this time. Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Ms. Light?
Am I allowed to make a brief statement before I vote?
Not.
Okay, no.
Ms. Hira?
Yes.
And I don't know if we can hear Mrs. McCune. Can we hear her? Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. This time, I'd like to call for nominations for the office of vice president. Chair recognizes Mrs. Gray.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Salmon.
Is there a second? Chair recognizes Ms. Schaefer.
I second that nomination.
Are there any other nominations for the office of vice president? Seeing none, I'd like to move for a vote on I will move the vote on the nomination of Mr. Salmon as vice president, as moved by Mrs. Gray and seconded by Ms. Schaefer. Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Ms. Light?
Yes.
Ms. Hira?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to call the roll of the new board, and then I will turn over the gavel to Mr. Salmon, since he's present. Where's my schedule? There it is. Mr. Salmon?
Here.
Ms. Schaefer?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Mrs. White?
Here.
Mrs. McCune?
Here.
Ms. Hira?
Here.
Mr. Markarian?
Here.
Ms. Light?
Here.
At this time, I wish to turn over the chair to Mr. Salmon. John. Take it, not that it's needed most of the time, but just in case. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. Happy New Year, and congratulations to the new board member and the returning board members. This is a statement of public meeting notice. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Bernards Township. Notice of the time and the place of the meeting was provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspapers as designated by the Board of Education and to the Township Clerk, and a copy of the notice was posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education offices in accordance with Public Law 1975, Chapter 231A. Due to the pandemic, the Board of Education expects that in-person attendees to this meeting, number one, have completed and passed a self-assessment of personal health done at home using the district screening tool. Number two, wear a face covering pursuant to NJEO 251. Three, sit in a socially distanced manner for members of different households. And four, maintain social distancing if waiting in line to make public comment. For those members of the public who are unable to attend our meeting in person, there are 2 live stream links of the meeting posted through the district website. The 2 live stream links are both airing our meeting. Each simply backs up the other to be prepared for possible technical difficulty. We very much welcome input from the public. There are 2 times during regular meetings that the public is invited to speak. One time is early in the meeting before the board votes, when you may speak about any item that is listed on tonight's agenda. Towards the end of the meeting, there is another public forum to address any matter of public concern related to the schools. When you approach the microphone, please state your name and address. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes duration. No participant may speak more than once during a given public comment session. In order to run efficient meetings and to allow maximum opportunity for members of the public to speak, the board reserves the right to set a different time limit for individual comments and/or to set an overall time limit for the public comment portions of the agenda. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question board members individually. Please understand the public comment portions of our agenda are not structured as question and answer sessions, but rather they are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. The board may or may not respond to public comments. Any board responses to public comments will generally be addressed during board forum or during committee reports. However, all comments are considered and will be investigated and addressed as appropriate. Please be courteous and mindful of the rights of others when speaking. Comments may not be abusive, obscene, threatening, or irrelevant. Please understand that students and employees have specific legal and privacy protections. The board is not permitted to respond in public to comment about students and employees. Please also understand that the board will not be responsible for the content of comments made by members of the public. Members of the public are cautioned that they are speaking at their own risk, and any personally directed statements that they may make may subject them to legal liability to the affected individual. If it's necessary for the board to go into executive session at the end of the meeting, we will provide an estimated length of time for this session and whether any action is anticipated to be taken upon returning to public session. So the first item we have here is the approval of the 2002 Board of Ed meeting schedule with dates listed in the agenda. I guess we have to move for that, John? Yeah. So can we have a motion? Suzanne and Jen White. Roll call, Mr. McLaughlin, please.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes?
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Ms. Light?
Yes.
Ms. Hira?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Thank you. Next item up is the student representative, Mr. Lee. Welcome back. Happy New Year.
Thank you, and a Happy New Year to you too, Mr. Salmon, and to the rest of the board, and congratulations on your returns or your new appointments to your new roles. And to everyone else, good evening. On behalf of the Ridge student body, I hope that everyone here had an enjoyable and relaxing holiday break, and that you are all back and ready to make 2022 a better year than 2021. The Ridge music program has had an absolutely spectacular first few months, and it truly would be remiss of me not to highlight their accomplishments. For the first time in almost 2 years, the Bernards Township Music Program performed live music on this very stage for the Ridge faculty, celebrating the holiday cheer properly for the first time. Additionally, the Ridge bands, orchestras, and choirs hosted live winter concerts, thanks in large part to the hard work of administration, staff, students, and parents for keeping these activities safe for everyone. Also, the Ridge a cappella choir performed in various concerts throughout the community during the month of December, including Ridge Oak Senior Housing, Bernards Township Library, St. James, the Somerset Hills Baptist Church, the Somerset Hills Lutheran Church, the Somerville Caroling Festival, and other various performances throughout the Ridge High School. Finally, the Ridge Music Program achieved incredible success in the Central Jersey Music Educators Association Regions auditions, with a total of 26 students across the various ensembles earning spots in this very, very prestigious program. Additionally, quite a few of these spots are either first chairs or section leaders, a truly remarkable accomplishment. Ridge extends its congratulations to all of the students, parents, and of course the music faculty for their dedication and hard work. As Ridge enters a new year, we are determined to use our 2021 experiences to forge our paths going forward, continuing to make Ridge an even better place to learn and grow. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Gordon. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Lee? No? Okay. Well, Gordon, thank you very much. I hope we can mirror your enthusiasm as the new year starts. And as usual, if you have stuff to do, you can take off. If not, stick around. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Salmon. Welcome to 2022. I hope everybody had a nice winter break and has a great new year ahead. Hopefully, we'll be turning the corner through this pandemic as we get through the winter and with a little luck, maybe looking back on it in the spring. I guess that remains to be seen. But I just wanted to let folks know that on the subject of the pandemic and our current spike in COVID numbers, that I received some email over the last week or so, as did many of the board members. And one of the things that I appreciate people are curious about is this issue of being virtual versus being in person. And I just wanted to take a minute to remind everybody that as this year began with our road forward requirements from the Department of Education, we're not to be running virtual school this year. And so I can appreciate that people are questioning that, because they may have heard that one district or another was virtual today or had plans to be virtual at some point over the next week or two. And I know from speaking to many of those superintendents as to why they are virtual, it's not because they don't want to honor the requirements of the road forward document. It's because they don't have the staff to open their buildings. And that to me is the primary reason that I'm aware of as to why school districts may have been virtual today, or at some point have plans to be so this month. For us, I'm very, very pleased to report that we have just an amazingly dedicated group of administrators, teachers, support staff, nurses, and the way that they plan and pull together to try to keep our charge going, which is to be here for the kids in person and to provide the education here for them to come to school. It's incredible. It's really humbling to work with these folks. Talking throughout the holiday break, on nights, weekends, asking them to participate in calls with me on New Year's Day. They're answering the bell every time, and I really I can't say enough for how hard everybody works and their commitment to trying to keep things open. And that has been challenging, as everyone knows. What we see in our communities, the trends that we see across the county and the state, they typically follow our staff and our kids, and we're seeing that now. So we did have a lot of challenges today, but between our substitutes, and kind of retasking some of our staff to pitch in, our supervisors and administrators covering classes, lunch aides, putting in some extra time, just creative things that we could try to do to have a semblance of a reasonably normal day. Were there some give and takes in order to make that happen? Of course. We didn't have a lot of substitutes working in the district, so we had to get a little creative. I had mentioned to some people, actually to the community and an SOS Express message, that we would consolidate, and I think unfortunately some people took that to mean that we were going to cram large numbers of kids into a small space. That's not the case at all. We used large spaces like the one that you're in here, and you may have 6 classes of students spread out in a space like this one, and obviously that's not ideal, but it's allowing us to be open and to have kids come to school in person. We are looking, as of right this moment, a little bit better tomorrow with staff, and hopefully things move forward in a better direction instead of one that makes it more difficult to staff. But for me, in my part, I feel as though we want to be in person for our students. That's our charge, and we will be able to do so as long as we can staff. And that's really what it's about, making sure that we have the staff here to operate schools in a safe and effective way. So I just wanted to kind of address that a little bit, given the number of emails that have come up. I did see some comments about mental health and things of that nature, and obviously that's a big concern for us as well. It's been something that we've been focused on for years now, and that's another reason why we really want to try to keep schools open in person, despite some of the staffing challenges and creativity that we might have to use to make that happen. Just a couple of footnotes from our nursing team that sort of came to me over the course of the holiday, and especially today as we debriefed with a brief meeting at the end of the day. Please don't send your children to school if they're ill or if they have just recently tested positive for COVID. We are still following the guidance that was issued on December 15th, and students that test positive for COVID do have to do 10 days outside of school if they've tested positive. Now I know, as I mentioned in an attempted communication over the holidays, which of course is tough. I know we're all so busy and everyone's coming back from traveling, that the CDC did put out some guidance involving shorter amounts of time, even for people who have actually tested positive for COVID. Those general guidelines for the general public have not been vetted for school districts by the New Jersey Department of Health, and we follow the New Jersey Department of Health guidance documents. If those are updated in some way or changed in some way, and that's the path that we have to follow, then certainly we will do that. But for now, that has not happened. We have been told to continue to follow the guidance that was updated on December 15th, 2021. So just a plea from our nurses, if the kids aren't feeling well, don't send them to school, call us, and we'll work with you. I know there was also some question about access to virtual instruction, and we want to provide that in instances where COVID is the cause of the absence. And the law and the road forward document that we are expected to adhere to does provide that if that's the situation, that school districts will work with families to provide a commensurate experience for kids that are home on quarantine, or kids who might be home because they have COVID or just had COVID, and maybe their symptoms are low and they're able to do their schoolwork and they want to participate. Well, we want to try to work with those students and help them access education, and we have been working through our teachers to open Zoom links for students so that they can participate. And that's really the exception to where we're providing the virtual instruction. That happens as quickly as possible. It takes time sometimes to get that set up. It can take a day or two. It's a little bit easier at the 6-12 level. And I know that today, in an effort to try to help students access their education, as we were catching up on all of the documents for students in terms of why they were absent, we were allowing them to Zoom into class, and of course we're working on tidying up exactly who's doing what quarantines and when they can come back to school. So it was a very, very busy holiday and an extremely busy January 3rd. And as I said, I just really appreciate the hard work from all of our teachers, from our administrators, from our nursing team. It was a really big lift to get through the day, and hopefully tomorrow will be a little bit better. I know that the folks that are running our buildings will take their experience from today and try to make things a little bit better each day going forward as we hopefully navigate through this spike without having such horrible staff shortages that we have to do anything horribly drastic. So with that, congratulations to our incumbent board members that have returned to serve. Congratulations to Ms. Light for joining the board for the first time. And just one point of clarification, since this seems to come up whenever we have a vacancy on the board and people inquire about the position and they want to know how much the compensation is. For everyone's benefit, I am always thankful for the people that serve on the board because they put in a ton of time. No one really sees it except for the public Board of Ed meetings, but these folks are up here because they care about kids, they care about education, and they want to serve their communities. And they're all doing that without compensation. So if you are interested, thank you. I agree with that wholeheartedly. If you're interested, I know Jen Nicholson has been sending out packets for people that might be interested in filling vacancies. Just know that it's not a paid position and it is a lot of work. So thank you again to all of our board members, and especially welcome to Ms. Light. And with that, I will be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. The next item is public comment on agenda items. Is there any public comment on agenda items tonight?
Good evening. Keith Molinari, 27 Franklin Drive, Basking Ridge. Excuse me. Sit up here a few times criticizing you all on different things, but tonight's not that night. I want to thank you for keeping schools open, commend you on your creativity. I know everybody's experience is different. My kids had pretty much almost a normal day at Ridge. My son didn't miss any classes, and my daughter just had to do one period in the pack where she went on Google Classroom and did her work. And then she had basketball practice. So in striving for normality, I think you guys did a great job with this, as well as the teachers and the staff. Keep up the creativity. If there's staffing shortages with Aramark, let us know. We'll send our kids in with lunch. If you have to consolidate more classes, let us know. In my opinion, these kids are together quite a bit more than people, really realize. So I'm not really too worried about that. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep the schools open. I think it's a great start to the year that you managed to do that. And, I hope you keep showing the same initiative and keep the doors open. That's all. Thank you.
Any other public comment on agenda items? No? Okay, we'll close public comment on agenda items. Oh, okay.
So just a reminder, we have been having public comment available through the district email btconnect@bernardsboe.com. So we were going to allow that for one more meeting, being this meeting. I'm looking right now to see if there's any public comment on agenda items. There are a few here, so I will work through reading those since both Mr. Sy and Ms. Fox send their regards. They couldn't be here this evening. So let me filter through here. Okay, there may be some mix here in terms of agenda items versus not agenda items, but I did speak to this issue a little bit under Superintendent's report. So the first comment here is from Beth D. DeMonico of 9 Woodstone Road. I'm a parent and a pediatric nurse practitioner. The amount of COVID cases in the district is overwhelming. The district is requiring that each student who tests positive to receive a physical exam by a physician to return to physical activities after their quarantine. This includes PE and school-sponsored sports, and by default, this would include recess. The CDC, New Jersey Department of Health, nor the Berners Township Department of Health requires this. You just mentioned in the meeting how we are following all of the guidelines of the Health Department, yet this is not a recommendation by the Health Department. The American Academy of Pediatrics does not require medical examination unless students demonstrate or report symptoms listed of concern for multi-inflammatory syndrome. Data has shown that the Omicron variant has very low incidence of MIS in children. Parents who have requested this required examination from their pediatricians have been told that it is not currently a recommendation. Furthermore, pediatricians are overwhelmed with the amount of sick children. Many of the pediatric offices themselves have low staffing due to COVID infections. The staff coming to work are overwhelmed and exhausted. Appointments are not available for the volume of otherwise healthy students that are now required to be examined for clearance of physical activity. I'd like to know what is your rationale requiring this exam, and I would like a direct recommendation from our district physician, Dr. Spiesler, as to whether or not he recommends this requirement. Second comment is from Chitra Sabapathy, address 21 Paisley Lane. I have 2 children currently studying at Berners Township. I would like to express my concern regarding the current in-person learning taking place in our district. As we all know, COVID cases are racing past all previous records and breaking all immune barriers, infecting people at unsurpassed rates. As a result, schools should move to remote learning for a period of 1 to 2 weeks to prevent us from playing a part in the spread and unnecessarily flooding our health systems, especially the case for those who are unvaccinated. Despite the decreased severity of the current variant, especially in the vaccinated, anyone testing COVID positive is required to quarantine 10 days prior to returning to school. The reason for my requests are numerous. The quarantine process and resulting absence, especially in high school, leads to many unfair disadvantages for certain children. The concern for unnecessary community-wide spread, close contact issue, and contact tracing, lunch without masks, bringing home to little children ineligible to be vaccinated, and the elderly residing in the house, who get it despite being boosted, speaking from personal experience. Jeopardizing health of immunocompromised individuals and the challenges inbuilt while playing sports all play a role in my making the request to initiate virtual learning for 1 to 2 weeks. We want to ensure safety and health for all students, family, and community members at large. Thank you. Next comment is is from Gervine Swanee, Mountain Road, Basking Ridge, New Jersey. I'm a parent of a Liberty Corner student. I'm struggling to understand the decision made by the BOE to not go to virtual the first 2 weeks after New Year's. I'm a parent who literally spent the holiday season with my nuclear family avoiding exposure to COVID. But here I am being forced to send my child to school without being given the option to go virtual. I understand that providing both options, virtual and in-person, is not feasible for the school, but for the safety of little kids, it is critical that we take necessary precautions to avoid exposure when we are all aware that many people have traveled or have had families visit over the holiday season. On top of that, there's a shortage of teachers, cafeteria staff, bus drivers, etc., And all of those issues can be resolved by virtual learning, so why has that measure not been taken? Email was sent that potentially classes will need to be combined due to short staff, which will result in kids potentially being lumped in classes together, which is much worse when it comes to exposure. Many school districts have either gone virtual or have to avoid exposure during snack and lunch. But the board has disappointed parents by forcing them to send their kids to school and increasing their risk of exposure. Parents should be given the option to go virtual, and that right should not be taken away from us. Please answer why BOE is helping to spread COVID. Next public comment is from Pallavi Shah, 4 Honeyman Road. As a parent with 2 kids in the school district, I would like to request you share with us the rationale used to make the call of not being virtual for the first few days of January post the winter break. So many other school districts in New Jersey have decided to play it safe and contain further spread by virtual temporarily for either first week or first 2 weeks. Daily new COVID cases in New Jersey were 821 on November 1st, 3,188 on December 1st, and 33,724 on December 31st. Until last week, the state's single-day record was 6,922, set January 13th, 2021. In the last 1 week, New Jersey State has registered daily over 20,000 plus cases. So clearly there has been a tsunami of cases in the last few days as people return from holidays and family gatherings. Agreed, cases are milder, but the disruption to business, school remains the same when someone tests positive and can't attend school or report to work. We witnessed that last week when airlines were forced to cancel hundreds of flights as they didn't have enough healthy staff for these flights. New York subway suspended 3 subway lines yesterday due to COVID-related crew shortages. Amtrak also canceled few trains. Once again, would urge you to consider your decision to make safety of staff and kids a priority, do our part in containing the spread. The next public comment is from Solani Mathur, 23 Penwood Road. Please give us the option of virtual school temporarily, like some other districts are doing. I understand that you're under pressure to stay open and fully in person, but my children's safety is paramount to me. We have followed the experts' advice diligently throughout the pandemic and take all responsible steps to keep ourselves and everyone around us safe. I want to keep my children safely home at least for this week. However, we are concerned about the schoolwork that they will have to miss. Thank you for the difficult work you do every day, and please consider my request. The next comment is from Bindu Balan of Constitution Way, Basking Ridge. Thank you for everything you all do for the community. My question is regarding option of virtual school for 2 weeks as everyone returns from the holidays. I understand from Nick's email that went out on Sunday, there is a shortage of staff and bus drivers. Please clarify why the township is not allowing the virtual option for the next 2 weeks. Many of the neighboring townships have gone virtual. Okay, the next public comment is from Murthy Keg of 41 Huntington Road. As a parent of 2 kids, one in RHS and Mount Prospect, considering recent spike in COVID cases, primarily among kids, plus Omicron being super spreader and hospitals running with full capacity, low staff, hard in getting appointments, seriously concerned in sending kids for in-person school. Don't want to put kids at risk with in-person school, hence request BOE board members to seriously consider and provide remote option till situation gets better. Queries: what is strategy in rolling out remote option for parents who are concerned? What additional measures school district has taken so parents feel safe when their kids are at school in person? The next comment is from Stacy Irvine, 42 Mount Airy Road. First, I would like to state that I disagree with the plan to no longer read public comments submitted via email into the public record. The emailed comments have been relatively few recently, especially when compared with the larger number of comments made in person at the last several meetings. By making this change, you're excluding everyone in our community who is immunocompromised, high risk, or lives with a family member who is. Especially now during this Omicron tsunami, Parents like me who are caregivers of seriously ill children cannot risk sitting for an extended period in an indoor venue, especially when a portion of the crowd tends to be unmasked. Please reconsider the decision. Do not silence the voices of the people who need to view the meetings from home in order to protect the health of their families. Second, I disagree with the stay open at any cost plan that was implemented today. If students are being warehoused in the auditorium without actual learning taking place because their teachers are sick, then give parents the choice to opt out and keep their children home without penalty, especially at the high school where there are so many teachers and students currently out on quarantines and Zooming in already. Why not allow high-risk students and students with high-risk family members to Zoom in too if they choose? By having less students in the building, you decrease the risk for everyone. Bring back the plan from the fourth marking period last year, when anyone who wants to be in person can be, and anyone who wants to be virtual can be too, just for a few weeks until the peak is passed. And, oh, there's one more. Sherry Nelson, this public comment is from Sherry Nelson of 195 Smoke Rise Road. My son spent a third of his day sitting in the pack without receiving educational instruction during that time. Sitting in the pack while not receiving instruction is not very creative, in my opinion. There are clearly not enough teachers to keep the school running properly. The Berners Township Health Department has reported that our town had the highest number of positive COVID cases this past month than we have had any other month through the entire pandemic. Did the health department advise you to keep the kids attending in person and to consolidate large numbers of students in holding areas since there are not enough teachers? This does not seem to be a sound strategy from a health and safety perspective. Many towns in New Jersey went virtual due to not having enough staff. We clearly do not have enough staff at Ridge, given the amount of kids who spent a lot of time sitting in the pack today. The logical thing to do would be to take a week or two virtual just to give the staff members who are quarantining time to be able to get back to school. One comment just came in. Mike Lordy, there isn't an address.
Accepting 7 or?
We start at 7. The comments have to come in at 7 or after. So the spirit of the comment is supporting keeping schools open in person. And that is the last public comment for something that was on the agenda. There's one so far of a couple non-agenda.
I think you already responded to the virtual in-person thing. So I just want to reiterate what Mr. Markarian said about public comment and what was reported out at the last Board of Ed meeting, December 20th, that the board will be going back to its normal process for public comment, in that if we are meeting in person, public comment must be in person. But we are not precluding people from emailing the board if you have any concerns otherwise. The next item is the approval of minutes. Kirsten, just so you know, you can abstain from this since you weren't there. Mr. McLaughlin, can we have a roll call, please? Oh, motion first, right? I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Ms. Gray and Ms. Schaefer.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes?
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Ms. Light,
Abstain.
Ms. Hira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Mrs. McKeon?
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Vice President,
Thank you. The next item is the Finance Committee report. There is no report. We'll be meeting later this month. There is one item on the agenda. Could somebody make a motion, please? Ms. White, Ms. Gray, second. Mr. McLaughlin, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes?
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Ms. Light,
Abstain.
Ms. Hira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune, Mr. Vice President,
Thanks. Personnel Committee report. Robin, do we have anything on that?
No, we haven't met since the last meeting.
Got it. Next item is the Policy Committee report. We don't have one. Curriculum Committee report. Jen, do you have one? Okay.
We
Take
do.
it away.
Sorry. All right. We discussed 2 new courses. The first is kinesiology. It is a follow-up course for those who took anatomy and physiology. It's an introductory course in sports medicine and the study of human movement. Topics of study will include nutrition, physical therapy, strength conditioning, cardiovascular conditioning, and athletic training. The course will culminate with a project requiring students to develop a treatment and recovery plan for a hypothetical simulated patient that covers diet, exercise, physical therapy, occupational, and other integral components of the rehabilitation process. CP and honors students courses will be offered concurrently. Students electing the honors level of the class will be held accountable to more rigorous, detailed use of anatomical vocabulary in both verbal and written coursework. At this level, students should expect to have to support their coursework with more research about contemporary professional practice. We've discontinued the 3-course sequence in biomedical science offered by Project Lead the Way. Underclassmen who took the biomed course could previously continue on a pathway of elective sciences, replacing the 3-course Project Lead the Way sequence with a single anatomy course created the need to create this additional elective science course. And based upon historical enrollment data, 2 sections of the course are anticipated annually at no added cost, as materials do not need to be purchased, additional staff and annual licenses are not needed. A 3rd course could be exclusive to 11th and 12th graders, but historical low enrollment is a function of competition with other AP and honors electives available across all departments. Thus, a need for a 3rd course is not expected at this time, but it will be monitored. As previously reported, the state of New Jersey is implementing a new graduation requirement in the spring of 2022, which will require all students graduating in 2023 and beyond to take and pass a new graduation assessment, the New Jersey Graduation Performance Assessment. An elective course is being proposed in preparation for 12th graders who do not meet the cut score, and the cut score is still being determined, in the spring of their 11th grade in either mathematics or English language arts. The primary objective for this course will be to prepare students for the various required high school graduation assessment pathways in both mathematics and English language arts. The core skills and activities of the course are aligned to the New Jersey State Learning Standards. The objectives and activities in the course will be differentiated to fit the varying needs of the individual students in the course. It is important to note that this course does not fulfill mathematics or English language arts graduation requirements. Some details are still being determined, such as whether to alternate by week or day the different subjects. A student portfolio can also be worked on at the same time as the test prep in the event a portfolio submission is needed. Juniors must take the tests scheduled for the week of March 16th. Makeups are scheduled for the week of March 23rd in order to graduate. This course will provide students with dedicated time during school hours to receive remediation, prepare for retaking the graduation assessment in the fall, and complete the alternative graduation portfolio assessment. This course will only be offered in the fall and will be co-taught by a mathematics and English language arts teacher. We are also provided with many curriculum updates. Students in the CBAP program require intensive, individualized instruction across all skill domains, including language, social, pre-academics, academics, self-help, daily living, and vocational skills. The majority of the students do not take the state standardized assessments in ELA, math, or science. They will take an alternative state assessment called the Dynamic Learning Map in 3rd through 8th and 11th grades. Curriculum writing over the summer focused on the scope and sequence of science and writing skills. The Handwriting Without Tears curriculum for 1st grade was also worked on this summer. This program will be walked up to 2nd grade next year. Training on this was provided to staff at the October Professional Development, and an additional workshop was offered at the November Professional Development that provided an overview of the screening tool used to identify common error patterns. A review of resource room multisensory reading also took place. Best practices were identified in structured literacy and phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, and were aligned to the Sunday system. Interventions specific to elementary needs were developed with special ed, in-class support, and gen ed partnering and reviewing current response to intervention. This will be continued next summer. Supplemental materials for LLD math were determined based on student need and were cross-referenced with New Jersey state standards. The Bridges program, formerly called the Behavioral Disabilities Program, for grades 6 through 8 was worked on with updates to the program manual, a presentation for staff in services planned, and materials created to use with students. During the summer of 2022, the Bridges program at Ridge will undergo curriculum writing. The Learning and Language Disabilities program at WAMS is now large enough for there to be 2 classrooms. Curriculum for all subject areas was reviewed based on student need in order to determine materials necessary for each class. Grade 8 Resource Room Social Studies and Science are new classes. Special ed teachers coordinated with gen ed teachers to determine how to modify the curriculum for a resource room. A timeline for the year was created, materials and resources needed identified, and any modifications needed to the current program identified. Curriculum writing this summer will be needed to complete this review. At Ridge, there was curriculum writing for Resource Room in anticipation of the rotate and drop schedule and timeline updates for Algebra 1A and 1B. Lastly, there were updates to the curriculum for study skills and study strategies in order to meet the needs of students with the rotating drop schedule and those returning in person after last year. We briefly discussed the K-5 Summer Intervention Program. Students in grades K and 1 were invited to participate based upon their performance on the PASSE assessment, which identified targeted skill areas that were below benchmark. Students in grades 2 through 5 enrolled in instructional support, and selected individuals identified by building administration were invited to participate. Fewer students consistently participated than last summer, as summer camps ran as usual, and many parents opted to send their children to recreational programs rather than school intervention. The hope is the number of students qualifying for summer intervention will decline. Teachers are being trained to best use the 95% curriculum and 95% assessment, which focuses on phonological awareness. Teachers are becoming increasingly proficient in the curriculum, and it should impact learning. We reviewed the changes to the program of studies for the 2022-23 school year, included updated deadlines and timeline changes with regards to adding, dropping, and level changes. A 4th window for schedule change requests has been added, allowing students to level up, but this will only be for students who've qualified for a course the previous June and in courses with seat availability. The prerequisite for CP statistics has been changed. Previously, a final grade of B- or higher in Algebra 2 or C- or better in pre-calculus. Grades 11 or 12 were needed to qualify. It has been updated to completion of Algebra 2 and a C- or better in their previous mathematics courses, grade 11 or 12. The summer financial literacy online course will run with the added change that any student who withdraws from the course after July 2nd will receive a withdrawal on the student transcript. We are at the final stages of walking up the retitling of courses for science. 5 credit courses are all titled CP. These courses have no extra meetings during the unit lunch. 6 credit science courses are titled Enriched and meet for 1 extra session for half of 1 unit lunch. Tech Ed courses have been retitled in the wake of the discontinuation of Project Lead the Way. The titles are now better aligned to what the courses actually are and include better descriptions of the courses. Many course descriptions were also updated to reflect the SA2 subject tests are no longer offered by College Board. The AP pathway chart was also revised. All information will be reviewed in detail with students prior to course selection. Ms. Fox shared the following data in regards to course change requests. As of June 21st, 2021, there were 423 course change requests. 348 were approved, 75 were declined. Between August 25th and September 1st, there were 224 appeals, and 89 were approved, and 135 were declined. In addition, there were 352 course drops or level drops. In the future, we will be looking into how these numbers compare to appeals and teacher recommendations for the next year. And lastly, a 3-year review of D and E grades was shared. The students receiving these grades are mostly struggling learners or in CP courses. Many of these students have multiple grade failures. We don't see many students failing in higher level courses. This is a drop in the number of these grades compared to the first marking period last year, which is good. Our next meeting will be this Friday, January 7th.
Thank you, Ms. White. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. White? Nope. Thank you. And I guess we'll be seeing each other Friday. Wow, okay. All right, the next item is the Wellness Committee report. Suzanne, do you have something?
I do.
Okay, great.
The Wellness Committee met on December 9th, and we had a number of reports that we were invited to listen to. The first was an update about the Big Sibling Program, which is a wellness initiative that links high school students with elementary students. And there are currently 100 bigs and 100 littles involved in this program. There are some challenges. They would love a few more boys to be involved, especially on the upper school end. And so the gender matching has been a little bit of an issue. But they had a cool Halloween party in the gym with game stations. They planned, but I presume had, a holiday party, which was the Polar Express here in the pack with hot chocolate, which sounds fun. They're trying to brainstorm how to give a little more incentive to the volunteers. The volunteers are primarily juniors and seniors. They're considering adding some motivated sophomores. They're also working on budgeting and fundraising. Since this is a relatively new program, they're still working on some of that. And we may need to add a little money to their budget for supplies. We're going to send that over to finance. We had a report about Health 10. 3 years ago, the Board of Ed approved 3 extra weeks for Health 10, and this is related to wellness because sophomores have driver's ed as health. And the 3 extra weeks of Health 10 gave them a few weeks of health where coursework was added, specifically a very specific youth mental health training program. The committee originally proposed a whole marking period, but at that time it was approved for 3 extra weeks and said that they would evaluate it, and we're revisiting this now for 2022-23. There are a few issues with the program. They like the youth mental health training, but are finding it very difficult to schedule the 3 extra weeks in the schedule. So there's some discussion of adding 6 additional weeks for a full marking period. The new mandates in sexual assault and new health mandates, we could use that time for expanding this. But discussion is continuing, no decisions have been made, and we will be having discussions in conjunction with curriculum, I believe, too. We got an update about the Ridge Wellness Initiative, the Tea Time, and I'm not going to go through all this. What I would refer you back to is Jen White's report from curriculum last month, or that was only 2 weeks ago, where she reported out about what the wellness initiatives were talking about. But I do want to bring your attention to a few things that are coming up with the wellness initiative at the high school. I think I mentioned the bingo card from last week, that there were activities to do about selflessness and gratitude. The month of January moves the wellness program into a focus on integrity and decision making. February will be focusing on kindness, caring, and compassion. March will be forgiveness and humility. April, responsibility and commitment. May, citizenship and community. And June will be focused on service. They have a few events coming up. There's going to be a fundraiser at Panera, for those of you who don't feel like cooking that night, on January 14th. If you mention the wellness program, they'll get a little bit of that extra thing, and that information will be out, I'm sure, on the high school website. There will be another brew, which is for parents and any interested community members who are interested in learning more about this, on February 15th and on May 10th. And they're looking to partner a little bit with Communities in Crisis, who also attended the last brew, which was very nice of them. We had an update about the coaching training. Now, we've been looking at the coaching in conjunction with wellness to put together to incorporate wellness into the coaching manual. So Mr. Shello has updated the coaching manual, and we're putting together some requirements or some thoughts for coaches for training, things including positive coaching choices, student-athlete ideal balance, positive coach and player relationships, developing good relationships with parents, working with students who have hectic schedules. We're looking at materials from a variety of resources, including the Georgia Department of Education, which apparently has a great resource, and some asynchronous training modules for coaches. In addition to annual training, they're considering a mentor program for coaches, assigning new coach a mentor, similar to what we do with new teachers. And Mr. Syatt's going to be working with the PE staff and Mr. Shello on follow-up, like doing the module, following up with a mentor, and doing logging for new coaches potentially, and determining what components of modules are going to be required and what would be for new teachers. Mr. Syatt will be reporting out at every other meeting about updates and plans for coach training. Additional discussions ensued about the opportunity period at the high school. That was a presentation for the juniors and seniors. There's more information on Friday folder. They have released the opportunity periods for January. It's slowly picking up. This is the opportunity time during that group lunch. And there are things popular, like including the weight room, quiet spaces, study halls. There are some fun things that are totally, unrelated to academics, like jewelry making and yoga, and there's extra help. They are finding that kids are showing up and not signing up, so they appreciate that students will start signing up. We had some discussion about school safety with regards to wellness, and specifically that the counseling department is prepared to help students navigate any traumatic situations, and that the We Tip cards were going to be distributed, which are the see anything, say anything, and then can report on the phone. And the admin team at the high school are doing roundtables with students, including topics like senior privileges and incentives, dress code, and I think, although I would love to ask our student representative, but the general feeling is that the students are feeling a little more heard. For the next meeting, we're going to be talking more about the opportunity periods and the Great Adventure Trip. And that meeting will be on January 27th.
Thank you, Suzanne. Does anybody have any questions regarding the Wellness Committee report? No questions. Thank you. The next item is Liaison Committee reports. Are there any? I have actually a brief one from Somerset County Ed Services Commission. So Somerset County Ed Services Commission met on December 1st. The Ed Services Commission is a consortium of it's a shared service provider for all the schools in Somerset County. So every school board in Somerset County sends a representative to the Ed Services Commission to serve on their board. So traditionally they've provided transportation in our district to general education, special education, and sports extracurriculars. We still use them for some routes. And they have two schools there, mostly for special education and at-risk students. But their goal is, I think, generally to take those students, teach them academics, life skills, vocational skills, and then transition them to a vocational school. So at the meeting on December 1st, there was a report about their transportation providing. They said that the driver situation has stabilized, that they've seen, but no new drivers are entering the system. So they're not losing drivers, but they're not getting any new drivers. So it seems like transportation will be an issue going forward. Mr. Dunsavage, who's the superintendent of Somerset County Ed Ed Services Schools thinks available drivers will be reduced by half over the next 2 years. They had 32 new students enrolled in their school, bringing their total school enrollment to about 100. And they actually did a pretty nice project where they outfitted one of their old school buses as a mobile library and moved the library to a school in Ghana. So that was a really nice presentation that we got. And I don't think there's any other liaison committee reports. So we'll move to public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items for people here right now? Okay, there's no comment here. Ms. Marcari, do we have any email comment?
Yes. Just catching up on the last public comment from earlier. Mr. Mike Lordy sent in his address as 76 Washington Avenue. With 2 grammar school kids in 2 different schools, I applaud your decision to stay in person. My special needs child needs the in-person resources, and all signs point to this being much less virulent and a concern. I'm sure the decision was not made lightly, and everyone's safety is paramount to all of you. Thank you for attempting to keep normalcy in our child's lives.
Mr. Markarian, can you speak up just a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
Next comment is Sonia Reggie, 31 Handsome Road. My family and I are all for in-person learning, but Omicron is fast-moving. It is supposed to peak by mid-January. Hopefully a couple weeks of virtual classes will prevent kids and their families in turn from contracting it. Numbers are fast rising, and I think our community will have to be prepared for the eventuality that our kids will contract COVID through school and then transmit it to everyone in the family, especially endangering the health of family members with comorbidities. Many school districts in New Jersey, as well as most of the colleges, are starting semesters with virtual classes. I wish we were given the option to be in person or virtual for a few days, as in the marking period for last year. Next comment is from Dana Juskin, 6 Brook Ridge Drive. I fully support in-person learning at this time. Our district does a wonderful job of providing a safe, caring, and educational environment for our children. Our children have already missed out on so much the past few years. In-person learning is what our children need, not only to engage in education, but also friendships. I'm confident we can continue to do so safely. Okay, there's a couple from earlier. Nicole Skeeta of 35 Tall Timber Lane. Thank you for all you have done to reopen our schools. Virtual learning is no longer an option for our children. My elementary-age son has had to Zoom in for a total of 20 days this year. Virtual learning doesn't work. He is behind academically, and it had taken a huge toll on his mental health. The procedures we have in place to protect our children in school are working. We all know the spread is not happening in schools. Please stop punishing our children and take virtual learning off the table for good. This pandemic has taken a huge toll on our children, and it's time we advocate for them. Schools should be the last to close, not the first. Colleen D. Gambatista, 305 Lyons Road. Thank you so much for opening schools for in-person education. I think this is extremely important to continue having our children in school, even if that means we need to be creative. Today went great at Cedar Hill for my 2 kids, and want to thank everyone for making that happen. We have to live with this, and keeping our children in school is imperative. Barbara Geary, 66 Dryden Road. Hello. Happy New Year to all of you. I want to thank Mrs. Korn for her service and dedication to the district. I'll miss her voice at the board meetings. We needed her as she was the only member willing to speak at every board meeting. She stated time and time again that our children's mental health should be a priority. Dr. Lee Savio Beers, president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, said in a statement, young people have endured so much throughout this pandemic, and while much of the attention is often placed on its physical health consequence, we cannot overlook the escalating mental health crisis facing our patients. I believe Mr. Markarian and the board took this into consideration when they opened schools today. Thank you to all the teachers and staff that came together for this goal. Each situation may not have been ideal, but hopefully each day will be better. Can the board explain the goals they approved at the last meeting, specifically making communication to the public more efficient with the focus on the chain of command? Why do you believe this is an important goal, and how isn't communication currently efficient? The next comment is from Pranay Misra. I'm Pranay Misra, 34 Battalion Drive, writing to you as one of the parent of Bernard School to kindly request that both of my children studying at Mount Prospect and Williams have the option of virtual learning model, at least for the first 2 weeks of January 2022. Start effective from January 3, 2022, due to sudden spike in COVID cases in our county. The reason for the request is based on recent news on Somerset County. We see a high increase in the number of COVID cases, and Somerset County is deemed as critical. Plus, we also see many families traveling during holidays to meet and greet near and dear during holidays, and now just returning back. Plus, I have a situation at home where my wife is pregnant, and it can be at high risk if my children come into contact of COVID virus. Hello, my name is Nella Oliveira of 83 Galloping Hill Road, Basking Ridge. I sent an email on December 9th to the administration at Ridge High and Mr. Markarian regarding the closure of bathrooms. 2 days later, Mr. Lasvik made an announcement that bathrooms would reopen soon. It's now January and still not all the bathrooms are opened. No open bathroom in several wings. Some of the open bathrooms do not have fully operating stalls, meaning limited number of working stalls. When will this be addressed? This is clearly a problem. What I was told would be addressed never was. I expect an honest answer to this matter. Excuse me. Oh, thank you. There was one more I have to find. Carolyn Gaziano, 17 Manchester Drive. Dear Board of Education and Mr. Markarian, I'm writing today to follow up on my 2 emails sent in November and 1 email sent in December, which was read aloud at the Board of Ed meeting on December 20th, and my phone conversation with Karen Gray in early December concerning minor athlete abuse prevention. During that conversation, Ms. Gray indicated that the curriculum committee would be looking into providing training and educational resources for students, teachers, and coaches, and possibly parents. She also stated that counseling was available to students through SACS. I was very satisfied with her response till during board forum on 12/20, Ms. Gray stated that she thought that I was going to disseminate this information to the fencing team. Unfortunately, this was a misunderstanding, as I did not say this or imply this in any way. My youngest child graduated 5 years ago. I do not know the current Ridge fencers or their parents. I have absolutely no ability or authority to disseminate information to them. Although the news article about the Ridge fencing coach was the inciting incident, my concern is for all students and student athletes in particular, because statistics show they are more likely to experience abuse. Think about the dozen of young USA gymnasts abused over many years, or the young boys abused by Sandusky at Penn State. Do our students know how to recognize inappropriate behavior and know what to do about it? The Ridge cheer team and the forensics team travel to overnight competitions. Our rules for behavior sent to parents and students and coaches. Safe sport. Best practices say that an adult, coach, teacher, volunteer should never be alone with an unrelated minor anywhere that is not in public view and not interruptible. Do our coaches, teachers, parents, students know this and follow this? I'm not looking for answers to these specific questions at the moment. I'm simply raising questions for you to think about, investigate, and act upon. Thank you for your consideration. And that was the last public comment. Yeah, I was going to mention the board goal thing, but if you want to tackle that one, by all means.
Okay, so one of the board goals was more emphasis on the chain of command. So, and this goes for everyone in the district, right? Students, parents, teachers. So if we want to emphasize that if you have an issue, with your student, the best place to get an answer is the teacher. If you can't get an answer from the teacher, then ask the teacher's director or supervisor. And if you can't get an answer from that person, then go ask the supervisor in charge of the subject matter, or the building principal, or the assistant principal. So you can see that you're just kind of following up the ladder, so that it's not necessary that an issue needs to be addressed for an individual student at the Board of Education level at the outset. The Board of Education will probably not know what's going on with your individual student at the outset. So it's better to get some feedback from the teacher, and if you can't resolve the issue there, that's fine, that happens, and you just take it up a level and you get some more information, more feedback, and there's more collective thought, and maybe you can solve the issue once the supervisor gets involved or the director gets involved. So we'd like for everyone to, if they have issues with their student, to go directly to the teacher or the in-class support person or the child study team, whoever the first level of intervention, whoever knows your student the best. They will help you provide answers or point you on the right person to ask if you have a question. If you have a question about another student, not your own student, and you bring it to the Board of Education, you will not receive an answer, because that we cannot give out, there's privacy concerns, so we can't give out information about other people's students to you directly. So if you come to the Board of Education meeting and say, I heard that a class at Cedar Hill didn't have Play-Doh today, we will investigate that. We take all comments seriously, and we will look into all of them. But it's not necessary that you might get an answer to that because it maybe didn't involve your student. So, but we will address it offline. So that is a goal of the Board of Education, to reinforce the chain of command, just so that by the time issues do get to us, we have enough information from the student, the parent, the teacher involved, the director, the supervisor, the child study team, whoever may be involved, so that if there is an issue that rises up to the Board of Education level, we have enough input and investigation by everybody so that we can make have a reasoned discussion about it. So we'll conclude public comment on non-agenda items. The last item is board forum. Does anybody have anything for board forum? Ms. Gray.
I just have a couple of quick things, but I really just want to start by saying thank you to the board members for supporting me in the last 2 years, which were quite interesting as board president. As Mr. Markarian alluded, we put in an awful lot of time. It's not necessarily evident from the 2 Mondays a week that the public sees us, but this board has been terrific. I know we have a couple people who aren't here, but when needed, they respond swiftly and ready to step in whatever capacity is needed at the time, and it's really very, very much appreciated. And it was my pleasure to serve with Mrs. McCune. I appreciate her support, and then I'd like to move on to a couple of other quick things. One, the question that came up earlier about public comment and the change. As long as I've lived in this community, which is 23 plus years, the Board of Education has always welcomed communication from the public. So because we will not necessarily be going to or keeping a format that we adopted because of a worldwide pandemic does not mean in any way that this board is not interested in hearing what the public has to say. And we look forward to receiving your emails, and we look forward to helping to address the concerns that you bring to our attention. I also wanted to comment, and I appreciate some of the public comment in non-agenda. Often when the board receives comments and concerns via email or otherwise, I believe, and we all understand why this is, that the people writing believe that they represent the majority position on any given topic, and we've seen it with a lot of different topics. This has been today has been a really important reminder. We've had, I would say, maybe not quite 50-50, but a close balance of thank yous for being open today with the opposite point of view of we'd like to see you, have a week or two virtual. So there's never going to be a one-size-fits-all, and I think we just need to be mindful of that, and we're all doing the very best that we can to adhere to the guidance that is being provided to us. I think that was it. Oh, no, just lastly, because my name was mentioned, I do believe at the last meeting on December 20th, I did acknowledge publicly after the public comment that it was my mistaken understanding that there was some communication between Mrs. Gaziano and the fencing board. So again, I'll apologize publicly a second time for that confusion. And that's it. Thank you.
Anyone else for board forum? Jen?
I don't know as much as a discussion, just as a comment. And I don't know if it's because the emails came in before Mr. Markarian had spoken about this, but I still think that there's this misconception that we are not offering a virtual option to those parents who want it, like we did last year. They referenced the 4th marking period, and I just wanted to clarify, it's not an option for us to make that an option. That is from the state, that we are to be in person. So I just want to make sure that everybody out there and who's sending in those emails really understands it's not that we're not giving you what you want. It is not something that we are allowed to offer the choice of, do you want to be in person or do you want to be virtual and go back to that format of last year?
Suzanne?
I would just like to thank Mrs. Gray for her years of service, and I don't think anyone really knows how much time she spent. I don't know how she worked at all because of the amount of time that she spent doing Board of Ed work. So I would just like to thank you for your time. I also want to say something a little bit about the communication piece of things. Mr. Salmon mentioned that we are going to respond to things, and we 100% do too. To let everybody know, we've received, I think I counted almost 100 emails today. So please understand that they're not going to get responded to tonight. But when people come to the board with things that we have to push back down the chain of command, we can't respond. We're not going to respond to things that we can't. So I think that's where the communication is an issue. It's not that if you take it to us, it gets higher priority. You need to start with we need to help people understand the process, and that is where we're talking about communication and that. I think that's all I had.
Right.
I'm sorry, I know Kirsten wants to speak. I just want to say one thing to piggyback immediately on what Suzanne said about the emails, because there were some comments on some social media sites that were saying things, and I am going to try to quote, although I don't remember them exactly, but on Saturday, what was that, the 1st? So New Year's Day, there were people who emailed the board and then went on social media and said, I emailed the board a couple of hours ago. Can you believe I didn't receive a response yet? And I just ask for a little consideration for all of the people who are sitting up here or in any capacity or volunteerism. It's not our job to respond on New Year's Day in a couple of hours. And it would be really, truly appreciated if that consideration was given before a post like that is fired off. Thank you. I'm sorry.
First of all, as a mom of a special needs child right now with a learning disability, I do thank you for your creativity in keeping the schools open, because getting that kindergartner onto Zoom is impossible. I also wanted to just make a statement to clarify.
Do you want to get a little closer to the mic, Kirsten?
Sure, sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Sure.
I also wanted to make a statement as to why I voted the way that I did. I think it's important so you guys understand it, so you understand the thought process that I went through in order to make that decision. So as I've been very thoughtfully considering how I'd vote this evening, I did look up some key qualities of a good leader. I came up with integrity, objectivity, communication, and respect. Additionally, while making my decision, I also carefully considered specific provisions of the Code of Ethics that we were required to sign this evening. The first one being, I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board. Number 2, I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interests or partisan political groups. My decision on how I voted was not based on anything personal, but by actions that I feel violate these principles. This included showing support for personal attacks on me on social media, an ill-advised presentation to the Township Committee, and an appearance at a diversity inclusion meeting to support the same personal attack allegations. These actions did not reflect well on the board, nor did it reflect good on Ms. McKeon personally. I believe that our president should model the behavior that they would like to see in the community, and I believe that our outgoing president, Karen Gray, thank you, has accomplished this, and I would like to thank you again for your service, because I think you did an outstanding job. However, in my opinion, Ms. McKeon has fallen short in the last few months over the election, and that is why I voted no for her appointment as president this year. I do want to thank everybody for volunteering, and I do take this position very, very seriously, and I will model these key qualities of a good leader as I make decisions and vote on various different items with you all. And I hope to be able to have communications and open dialogue and make sure that we can do what's best for the community, our children, the teachers, and the district. So thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward to this opportunity over the next 3 years.
Hi, can you hear me, Nick?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I really couldn't hear. I heard that I was being discussed, but I couldn't hear what you said. I'm sorry. The sound is not good with everyone's mic with the Zoom meeting the way it's set up. So I'll have to listen to it afterwards to hear exactly what that was about. I just wanted to reiterate what several board members said, thanking Mrs. Gray for her service as board president. Little did she know when she took on the role that COVID was going to hit a couple months later. I mean, in retrospect, I'm very thankful that she was the board president the last 2 years because, you know, it was overwhelming as a parent, you know, dealing with COVID. I think all of us really, you know, were struggling. And, you know, she took a lot of time to talk to so many different members of the community, time that some of us wouldn't have been able to put in, making lots and lots of phone calls and listening to people's concerns and trying to help us all keep our sanity during the entire thing. So, Karen, I just want to thank you. It's been a pleasure being the vice president while you were the president, and thank you so much for doing it.
Anyone else for board forum? So I just also want to echo what Ms. McKeon said, to thank Ms. Gray for her leadership during COVID, also while she had a senior that was graduating, so I'm sure that was extremely difficult to try to manage that process as well. But I thank her for her leadership, pragmatism, and rational mindset during that time. Congratulations to Ms. Light, Ms. Hira, and Ms. McKeon for coming back to the board and being on the board. Congratulations to Robin again for being president. I want to thank all, like Mr. Mercarian said, want to thank all the students, staff, and parents for all of their efforts today, from getting kids out the door to being in a car loop to covering classes and just making it work. And I think it did work, and I'm reminded today of kind of the first day we had of school in the fall, where we weren't sure what was going to happen, and the board was having meetings all summer, and nobody knew what was going to happen until kind of the last minute, because we were waiting for guidance from the state. So this felt a little bit like that, in that we were dealing with staff shortages and students potentially being in quarantine, and requests for virtual schooling. So I just want to thank everybody that made today happen. We really appreciate the work of, like I said, students, staff, administration, and parents. Lastly, I'll just say, just to reiterate what Mr. Markarian said at the beginning, there are 2 open spots on the Board of Education. So please, we did put out something at the end of last year inviting everybody to participate, whether that's through the Board of Education or the PTO or a class parent or a team booster, or helping with the plays and the arts. So for the 2 Board of Education spots, yes, it is a lot of time, and certainly now it's very it's time consuming, but it's also very rewarding. So I hope that people will take an opportunity to find out what is involved. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of the board members you may or may not know, and they can give you a real kind of behind the scenes look at what goes on and how much time it is to commit to this, and answer any questions you have, because I think that's a very important part of the process, because I think, like Mr. Markarian said, a lot of people see this public meeting as kind of the Board of Education, the face of the board, and that is true in the public sense, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in terms of time, activity, interfacing with staff, students, parents, administration, other schools. So I encourage anybody that's interested to reach out to a board member in this town or anywhere else to find out what is involved. So thank you very much. And if we don't have any board forum, anything left for board forum, Ms. Gray?
Just really quickly, when the meeting started and I saw Melanie, in my mind I said, say thank you to all of our staff for, you guys are amazing, day in and day out, year over year, not just in the pandemic, but always. And I did forget with everything else that I had jotted down. So I just want to say thank you to the staff, because we love you and we appreciate you, and we know that you had to rise to an enormous occasion today, but not just today. So again, thank you. And thanks for always being out there smiling back at us, Melanie. We appreciate it.
Nothing else? Okay. We're ready for adjournment. Motion? Ms. Gray? Ms. Schaefer? All in favor? All right. Ayes have it. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.